was 18. I remember I paid $80,000 for it with a 5% deposit, and I'd sold that a couple of months later for $120,000. We've got a track record to double our revenue every 5 years, and that's constant.
Today's guest is someone who truly understands the long game. Tony Sass is the co-founder and CEO of Oriana Group, a business that has become one of Australia's most formidable private groups, with a footprint across property development, construction and various other verticals.
But on your point of Victoria, especially again in our market, the price point is well placed compared to some of the other states. If you're not passionate about something, when it comes to running a business, I wouldn't do it. But if you're truly passionate about something, that's when you grit your teeth, you dig your heels in, you succeed, you get across those challenges.
Today's guest is someone who truly understands the long game. Tony Sass is the co-founder and CEO of Oriana Group, a business that has become one of Australia's most formidable private groups, with a footprint across property development, construction and various other verticals, expanding across Australia and Asia. What makes Tony's story fascinating isn't just the scale, it's the resilience, strategic foresight and the quiet conviction which has been built for the last 20 odd years. From navigating through various crashes from the GFC, COVID and today's inflation-driven market, Tony's not only survived but also scaled. Today we're diving into the market, decisions and personal philosophies behind Oriana's growth. Tony, welcome to The Margin.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Good to have you here. Let's jump in and talk about Oriana and what it is today. Tell us a little bit about Oriana in terms of size, structure and the sectors that you're across.
Yeah, so Oriana today is probably made with three core parts of the business. At its heart, development and construction are the two core parts of the business. So from a development perspective, we develop in residential. Obviously, you've dealt with that part of the business. That's both in built form townhomes as well as land. We also develop commercial, so mixed use. And probably an easy way to explain it for everyone is if you go into our circle of competence and where we focus on is your growth corridors.
Yep.
So if you go out to any of the growth corridors,
you'll see an Oriana logo.
Yeah, if you see those communities, we basically develop those communities. So let that be townhomes, land, neighbourhood activity centres, your local activity centres, fast food, fuel, childcare. What we don't develop, that's probably an easy way to sort of put it, is we don't do a lot of industrial, and we don't do any government work, and we don't at the moment do anything in that a retirement space or a lifestyle community. So that's sort of our residential, and so to give you some sort of understanding of sort of what the pipeline looks like, we've got about $4.7 billion in the pipeline, and geographically, as I said, our core circle of competence is those growth corridors. We understand what drives success in those developments. So geographically, Melbourne has the largest growth corridor. So geographically, the core of our business, development business, is in Melbourne. And also we're moving into Southeast Queensland, which is the second largest market, Southeast Queensland. We've also got a development up North Queensland in Townsville, recently purchased. We've got some holdings in WA, and we're doing some childcare development in New South Wales. So predominantly, as I said, Melbourne, moving into Southeast Queensland. That's the development part of the business. Now the construction, the second part of the business, a big part of that supports the development. They work hand in hand. It is a competitive advantage to be integrated, especially in today's climate, especially the post-COVID climate, working from concept to acquisition to completion and ensuring you're sharing that IP across the business is a competitive advantage. Our construction business, so all of our developments we build, but we've also got a dedicated team that do some client detached work as well. In that house and land space. So that's sort of the makeup of our development and construction business. And then we've got an investments division. And what that is, the investments division, as I said, we enjoy building businesses. And so that holds a portfolio of investments, some that complement the property business, some that don't. Probably the two core or key investments are the financial services space, as well as childcare. And so the purpose of that division is to continue to expand the portfolio of businesses. But also one of the businesses we acquired back in 2016 was the NAB Private Wealth in Hong Kong. And that came with some quality personnel as well as licenses for funds management. So what we'll start to do, or expand on, I should say, is is take our skill sets or the people we bring into the business and start to create product where people can invest alongside us. For example, we do some things in private credit, and there's various other businesses we've invested into as well. So that's sort of broadly the makeup of our business and what we do. As I said, within our investment division, there's a few other businesses we've invested into. And as sort of directly, Oriana employs about 160 odd staff today. That's directly, as I said, that investments, just to give you some idea of that investments division, our childcare operation, so that's the operation, that employs I think 12 to 1,300 staff. And there's other various employees within the different businesses we have there. So that's broadly what Oriana looks like today.
So, Tony, obviously I've known you for a few years on a personal level and a professional level, doing some work together. It definitely became clear to me when I got into this industry who you saw the titans of the industry were and who to team up with when it comes to, I mean, we're a group that fundamentally sells property, and we definitely wanted to get involved with Oriana. But what I'd love to know, before we start talking about the origins of how it started, how did this all come about, and what were you doing in your 20s, and how did Oriana start?
Well, as a teenager, I always had a passion for real estate. I still remember walking through our neighbourhood to the train station, and it was out in the west of Melbourne, Yarraville. There's a lot of development at that point in time, and I always just had an interest in development in general. And also, I played a sport called lacrosse, and there was a parent there back at the time who was heavily involved in real estate and used to always speak to me about real estate in general when I was 16, 17. So I'd always had a passion for real estate. So that was always there. And then it was when I was 18, I received a phone call from that parent who had a business, and that business was selling house and land packages. So I was also started in sales in Hoppers Crossing. So I guess that's where it sort of first started, my entry into real estate, my first job. Then from there, I think I mentioned to you last time, early on, I'd saved some money, and my first investment in real estate was a block of land, and that was I remember the street was Gordon Street, Footscray, a Battle Axe block, so that's a block behind another house. Yeah. I remember I paid $80,000 for it, and I was 18, so it's 43 today. It's 25 odd years ago. $80,000 with a 5% deposit. And I'd sold that a couple of months later for $120,000. So I had a quick win, which helped. Yeah. I was in the industry, and then I took the profit from that and reinvested it, and started my development journey from there. Nice.
And was your brother involved in these early days? Or was
early days. So Stephen, obviously my business partner, been there the whole journey. So there's about 16 months between us. So Stephen was 17. I was in sales. I started to buy land. Stephen, he also got into real estate sales. I think he started in commercial, but he quickly obtained his builder's license. So it wasn't long after, a year or so after Stephen, he got into construction, and we effectively joined teams to develop properties while we were still working in sales for a period of time.
And how did two young guys, I mean, I've had my own business since I was 23, but why were you so driven in your 20s? Like, why are you buying property, flipping property, getting your builder's license? Where did that drive come from? Was it driven by?
That's a good question. The drive, I think it was instilled into us. So we grew up, as I said, in Yarraville. So the West was a different place to what it is today back then. So we didn't have a lot. We weren't wealthy, we were middle class, and we just always wanted more. So I guess it was always instilled into us from a very young age. Yeah.
Like a lot of these stories are, is definitely driven by the need to want more and be better. So you started doing some development. You had a couple of quick wins in your 20s. I'm sure there's a lot more within that journey, but let's start with the origins and the start of Oriana Group, and then we'll start talking about what it is today. But where did that all start, and what drew you from going from, doing these little developments to starting a company?
So it was an evolution, and if I reflect on it, as I said, so it started with, one unit, corner sites. Stephen got into construction. We were continuing to reinvest any profits we made from sites. there come a point in time, I think it would have been 18 months, 2 years in, where we both stepped out of our day jobs and to focus on growing the development and construction business. And it was just a constant growth, continued redevelopment, or continued reinvestment, I should say, in development. And I'd say through our whole 20s, while we were building a business, obviously, as the business was scaling, we were involved not only in development but construction as well. That's a heavy people business. It was just an evolution, and it was probably, we knew we were growing a business, but it probably wasn't until sort of 7 or 8 years in we sat down and started to plan longer term and think longer term. So it was a natural progression.
When was that? What year are we talking?
Well, geez, I couldn't pinpoint it exactly, but it would have been early somewhere.
2000s?
Oh, well, mid-20s. So it would have been, I was 99, so it would have been, mid 2005, 2000, somewhere thereabouts. As I said, it was a lead up. It was initially we had the passion for property and growing a business. And as I said, the first 7 years or thereabouts would have been a real hustle. Property is capital intensive. As I said, construction is people intensive. A lot of learning, and it wouldn't have been until you started to get some runs on the board, you started building a business, you thought, okay, let's start planning ahead and really thinking long term, Jan, and see what we can grow this to. And so that's when you start to see the real scale take place because of that long term thinking.
Yeah. You sort of said that 7 year mark, which is interesting because I had this number in the back of my head in my 20s, which was you got to survive the first 2 years, and someone said
there's a stat today. How many businesses fail in the first? How many years is it? But
half or something. So that was always in the back of my head. I'm like, this is taking way longer than 2 years, and I feel like it's 5. And somebody said to me not long ago, it takes 5 years.
I think we're still learning, so I think it takes a lot longer than it's 23 odd years, and we're still learning. So it doesn't stop.
5 years maybe when the hair stops falling out. And what did your team look like in the early days? Because we'll get to where you are now shortly, but was it small,
so
big?
Early days, obviously, as I said, it was myself and Stephen. I think we had a friend of ours who was helping with the construction business, Danny. And then early days, from a development perspective, we were light. We could manage a lot of we weren't doing, as I said, 10 units or whatever it happened to be. When you're 19, 20 years old, you don't have much in the development space. But the construction business started to scale. So you're talking site supervisors. I think the first person we had in the office was an accounts person. Yeah. And then it just scaled from there. So it started me, Stephen, Danny was assisting with the site element. Site supervisors, and then the first person I remember in the office was an accounts person. So it would have been a few staff.
And on that point, because I get the privilege to speak to you every now and then, we have these sort of long conversations about the market, and you're very curious, asking us how our sales are going and etc. Had you had any formal education outside of high school?
No, not at that point. Finished VCE and got straight into work.
Yeah, similar. I started a commerce degree and I think I turned up to the wrong exam, and then I realised this isn't for me. So, and what shaped you early on? Did you have any mentors or influences that helped you? Were you sort of just learning as you go through?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in general, and even today, I was one to learn of others, and I gravitate. If I see someone who's doing something, I think they're successful, doing something well in whatever their industry happens to be, I like to gravitate and learn from those people. So I'm very open to learning. So it would have been multiple people. I was, as I said, I was in sales when I was 18, and even the people I was working with then, why I was able to buy that first block of land, I understand that space. My directors at the time, they were doing the same thing outside of running a sales business. They also had development. So I was exposed to that. So I learned from them very early. And there's multiple people through my journey. And today I'm still constantly learning from others. So I wouldn't say there's an individual mentor, people that, individuals that shape me, but it was just that acceptance to learn of others. If I was to really pinpoint it to a person, the obvious one who has a huge impact is Stephen, my brother, just because we've obviously shared this amazing journey together and we bounce off each other. So, and we learn from each other as well. So if it's an individual, it'd definitely be Stephen. But as I said, I think it's multiple people that I've leveraged off through the journey. And today I continue to learn.
I was going to get to that, but I might bring it up now because Sam and I have been in business since we started, and we went to school together. So I've known him since I was 13, so he's essentially my brother. he thinks I've named my son after him. It's actually after my father. But we seem to get along pretty well. I mean, but I thought about you. I mean, you guys are family. Do you and Stephen ever butt heads, or is it just smooth sailing?
Always butt heads.
Yeah,
no,
okay.
we're very different.
Because you hear like family, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we get asked that question a lot. We get asked that question, especially from our lenders and banks. I always talk about that dynamic. So me and Stephen, as I said, are about 16 months between us. We've always been relatively close through our childhood and teenage years. Obviously, you have those little scuffs, and I'm the older brother, so I always won those. Don't know if I'll win those today, but so yeah, there's always those challenges. But I guess what it comes down to, and you might have this with Sam, is that underlying unbreakable trust, and in business, that's extremely important. We've got different ways. We're different in personality types are different, and the way we work together is different. Stephen, he finds opportunities, understands how to extract value, and I'm someone who's big on processes, procedures, execution, and follow through, and that's why it works. But as I said, ultimately, I think it's that trust and loyalty that we have that helps, and being brothers obviously helps as well from that perspective.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, at the end of the day, I think you probably want the same outcome.
Yeah, we're always aligned, and we have, as I said, we have a difference. I think, and everyone that works with us says that it works really well. We've got different approaches, different opinions, and when we're making a key decision, it's that compromise between two of us that ends up delivering an outcome that we believe is a successful outcome, just because of the difference of opinions to get to that end result.
Hotel or no hotel sort of thing. Well, so did you always think that Oriana was going to become what it is today, or did you envision it to get to where it was, or was it just this thing that was just organically growing in it, and you've arrived where you are?
Yeah, we've always had ambition to grow, and it's constant. And development, construction is where it started, and there's obviously other businesses we've invested in, because we in general, I think what we enjoy, and it comes from that construction space, is building. Let that be building, teams, businesses, obviously developments, and we've always wanted to grow. But we've got a North Star about continuing to push and grow, but we didn't really have a set. We want to be the leader, and in any industry. It's just been that constant, focus on growth and doing the right things to achieve that growth.
There's no particular KPIs around this target, and this is our 5-year blueprint.
There's definitely. So we've got a track record as a business to double our revenue every sort of 5 years. And that's constant, and we've got some other metrics in behind that we need to achieve as well. But they're your financial metrics, but then there's all the other metrics that make up a successful business, which is metrics, qualities in regards to our people, and there's a lot of effort on that part of the business to ensure sustainable growth for our business. So there's a lot we do day to day, and to ensure we achieve our targets, but I wouldn't say there's a long, that big grand vision as such to say we want to be a leader in this. We just go quietly about doing what we do, make sure we do it well and right, and execute on that.
Yeah, we can see that. I mean, we deal with probably small sections of some verticals within your business, and clearly you've got an elite team, which we see compared to other developers. Your team seems to always, there's always the same people and whatnot. Seems to be a really good environment, which is showcased. So it's an interesting piece there. So with your bread and butter and your obviously core offering and skill set's been that development and construction space, and then it's gone into the investment arm that has a holdings. How do you shift gears and drive and get across multiple different businesses? As a CEO, are you just viewing this as you're just purely looking at the numbers? How are you staying across and having this strategic foresight on all these operations?
Yeah, so our core has been, and we understand development well. outside of that, out development construction, I think when you build a business, you obtain these skills that can be transferable to other businesses. So even though, financial services is obviously an interesting one. When we invest in that, we didn't obviously have the knowledge of how to drive and run a financial services, a wealth management company, but we understood how to build a team and a business. So, and to your question there, I think the key is I'm across and understand quickly what are the key metrics or measures you need to see success in a business. But the key to being able to scale a business and go into different spaces is people. And it's that ability to grow teams of people and ensure that you set them up for success. So it's probably when we diversify outside of property and construction, we very quickly look to, we run a partnership model, whereas any business that we're involved in outside of the property and development, we've got business partners. So we need to ensure we're aligned from the beginning. They've got ownership within that business. And then we assist them and support them in building out the business. And a big part of that has to do with people. If we didn't have that focus, it would be impossible for us to diversify into the different spaces that we've been in successfully.
Has people been the biggest challenge, or has it been the biggest strength for Oriana?
Both.
Yeah.
If I reflect on our growth, we mentioned before, you've stepped out of VCE, you get into a sales job, you start building a business, you have to start managing people in your 20s. I did a lousy job of it back then, and there's a lot of trial and error and learning. And so it would have been a challenge. And as I said, when we got to that sort of point of thinking, okay, how do we scale this? People was always on the radar, and, attracting, growing, retaining good quality people. So it's been a challenge, and that is a constant challenge, but as much of a challenge it is, because it is a focus, I think that is a sort of advantage as well. So it's something that's a strength of Oriana, because we identified pretty quickly how important good quality people are. So there's a focus there. So I think it's a constant challenge. It's never perfect, but it's also a strength of ours, because we have some fantastic people, let that be our business partners in those various other businesses in the portfolio, or people within the core, the construction development business. That's definitely a competitive advantage.
Yeah. And what about, before we move on to the next segment, the future of Oriana? So we've sort of discussed a little bit about the making of it, where it currently sits right now and what it does. What does the next sort of 5 to 10 years look like? Because, as we hear, and I do very small scale developments, it's getting very challenging. Construction costs, I've, lent on your advice and speaking to you all the time, and, there's a lot of things that are going on in Victoria and the future, and with technology. I mean, what's your view on the future?
It's a difficult question to answer. We do take, because we're a private business, we're a family business, and we're not setting a business up for an exit of any sort, where other businesses, that's their motivation. We do take a long position. So we've got a horizon. There's obviously, we're across the detail of some of those factors you talk about that impact the shorter term, and you pivot and have to be agile to move and adjust to that. But we do make decisions, especially in development. You buy developments today that you're not delivering for sometimes 5, 10 years, some of these developments. So we're big believers in, if we focus on property and development, we're big believers in the ongoing, strength of that sector, even though there's some short-term challenges at the moment. And the big fundamentals behind that is population growth. There are obviously the challenges that come with that, supply, demand issues, affordability issues. So we feel we'll continue. As I said, we've got our targets, and we think we can continue to expand as our business in both development and construction. So we take a long view. We continue to invest into the long term, that growth story. Where Oriana, what it looks like, I think it'll be in the property and development, an extension, just a larger business what we are today. But it'll take a lot of work to continue to adapt to. I think, some of the challenges you speak about, I think that affordability piece is an interesting one. I think there's an opportunity there, especially in our space, in the growth corridors, to fill some of that gap and supply that stock. I think especially in if we focus on residential, our our townhome division. In a land subdivision, I think you'll just find lots get smaller. But there's a need. There's going to be a constant need. If you look at all the numbers of what population growth is going to look like over the next 5 to 10 years, and that's why everyone's talking about these housing targets, I think the long-term fundamentals of growth in property and development and construction are there. It's just adapting to the marketplace and adapting to the buyer requirements.
Yeah, totally. Well, we know with your townhomes, they're quite hard to get your hands on. So, and the demand is only getting stronger and stronger for these particular growth corridors. Victoria has had a lot of backlash. You sort of mentioned early on that you've sort of jumped into other states. Is that had anything to do with Victoria? Is it perceived as unattractive, or do you think it's attractive because it's a good time to acquire?
I think Victoria obviously has had challenges especially the growth corridors. It's had its challenges, obviously with land values, construction values, and making developments feasible. It's had its challenge adding obviously all the additional overlays of land tax and so forth, and all the other taxes. And there's a lot of issues when it comes to delivering of land in Victoria. And I think short term, you need a business that can adapt to that and be able to see through those challenges and be able to hold. And a lot of that comes to ensuring you're not over leveraged. Yes, I think for us, diversification is important. So that is the attraction to move into other states. Other states have their challenges. Southeast Queensland is becoming expensive. So I think an element of that is diversification from Victoria. And then another element is just a natural progression. If we want to grow, we need to move into other states as well. But on your point of Victoria, and I've been saying this probably I'm biased obviously because we hold the majority of our stuff in Victoria, but I've been saying it probably for the last 6 to 8 months, especially again in our market, Victoria is well placed when you compare it to some of especially from the price point, it's well placed compared to some of the other states at the moment. So I think, and as I said, we've been accumulating sites through these last 3 years because we are still a big believer in the strength of the Victorian and Melbourne market.
And is that Metro Melbourne or regional or a bit of both?
So we are and this is part of our business. Whatever we're doing, once we understand what we're out to achieve, we sort of stay focused on that, and we keep open to other opportunities, but our focus is on those growth corridors. We might do the odd development, inner-ring development, something smaller. We'll look at regional, so we're doing some stuff, Ballarat, Bendigo, and there's opportunities there. But the core of our growth and opportunities that we see is within those outer suburb growth corridors.
And what separates a good deal from a great deal? So, yeah, this is for my own personal interest.
It's a difficult...
Apart from it's just purely being a cheap site or having a lot of value.
Yeah, it's trying to extract value. I think it's hard to answer that question because it's case by case scenario, but it's really trying to ensure, and that's a big thing in our business.
Because Stephen negotiates on the...
He does a lot. He does a lot of the acquisitions, but I think that's fundamental. One of the there's a few things that have got sort of 3 things we focus on as a non-negotiable in our business and what drives success, regardless of what we're doing. And one of those things is value. And we really need to feel that when we are doing something, building something, buying something, that we're adding value to it. We're not marketing people. We really need to think, hey, if we're going to do something, that the next person gets some value from it. So it's a real focus on ensuring that we know where the value add is and executing on that. What's a good deal? It's a case by case. It's a difficult question to answer. But yes, one of the things I did get taught very early in development is it's all in the buying. If you buy right, the rest generally sorts itself out. Because if you pay too much for something, it's a long road back to success on that development.
That makes a lot of sense. And that probably is a good segue into sales. So Oriana does some pretty extraordinary numbers from development and construction side of things. What drives your sales, and how's that? Is that a core focus, or is your reputation just led to people coming to you to want to sell your product? Because I feel like businesses go through this sort of stage where they have to work really, really hard to get sales, and the longer they've been around and they've got a strong reputation, it's a bit more of an inbound than an outbound process. What's your sales process like?
Yeah, so we don't have a B2C sales team. So our total focus has been on B2B. Now I'm talking, and we're talking about the residential element, because then there's the commercial, which is 50% of our business. But in that space, all of our sales are done through external agents, businesses like yours. So that's who our client is, and so it goes back to, as I said before, those non-negotiables. One of the other non-negotiables of our business is a focus on relationships, and everyone says that, but we truly have a focus on ensuring that we grow strong relationships. So to your point before, a lot of our sales are inbound in the sense that people are coming to us. But we don't rest on our laurels. We ensure that we understand what those businesses, we have an understanding of what their client requirements are, what their requirements are. So we ensure that we're delivering on those requirements from a stock perspective. But not only that, development, construction, nothing's perfect. There's always challenges. So as soon as there's a challenge, a problem, we jump onto it early and ensure that we resolve that, because our focus is ensuring that those relationships we have, those businesses can have confidence when they are selling our product to their clients, that it's going to be delivered, and if there's a problem, it's going to be resolved. So sales is important. It's a big part of obviously revenue, but I think it's for us, it's more about what you do that will make sales. It's a byproduct of that. So the ensuring your product meets the demand, ensuring you're in touch with your the client, effectively the clients through the agents, and you're communicating and servicing those agents, and then you do everything right. Running a business, it's easy to say, but then you've got to obviously deliver on the outcome. If you've got that focus, sales seem to be the outcome of that.
Yeah. And I can tell you firsthand, that makes sense, hence why you're the first developer that we've invited on this, because from a reliability point of view, Oriana's been a dream to work with, especially because not everything goes to plan. So a lot of other developers will just sort of say, well, that's on your client, and definitely we haven't seen that at Oriana. It definitely will step in, even if it had nothing to do with you guys. Let's take a step back, and I'm really interested to know, because this is probably a hard question to ask, because it might be structured, it might not be. What does a day look like for you? I drive up Toorak Road sometimes and see you smashing a boxing bag.
Yeah, so a day for me always starts with some sort of training. Let that be boxing, running, gym. I can't start my day from Monday, a work day. I can't start my day without an early training session. Every morning training followed by an ice bath. I'm not the greatest of sleepers, so I need that to get going. And then it's every single morning, Stephen and me will catch up 8:30, 9 o'clock for a coffee, talk about the challenges that we're having, talk about anything we're dealing with, bounce off each other, and then it's into the office. And my days are still long days. I'm in the office to 8:30, 9 o'clock every night, and then I'll come home and do some reading. So they're long days, but they've changed. When you say what a day looks like, early days it was very hands-on, and so I understand every aspect of our business, from development to what the development teams are doing, from construction, estimating, I should say. I understand every part of it, so it's great to have that knowledge, but I'm not as hands-on today. A big part of my day at the moment would be that people piece. So there's a real focus, and it's difficult because people, they're challenging. So a big focus is creating an environment to get the best out of people. So my day would be a focus, general element of that, and then there's as you scale a business, especially a property and a construction business, it comes with a lot of risks. So there's an element of my day which is not always fun, but it's assessing where the risk is. Let that be when it comes to debt and developments and whatever happens to be, and especially when it comes to construction, OH&S, I step into those meetings. So just I'm across that. So my day really consists of either a big part is that people piece. Focusing on how we get, how we create that environment to attract, grow, and retain the best quality people, and supporting our leaders. And then there's an element that's ensuring that from a governance perspective, we're across any of the risks, and we know we can identify anything as early as possible.
On that governance piece, Oriana's got a board?
No, we don't have a board. Looking at the moment, and we do get this question asked a lot, so we're in the process of putting together an advisory board. At the moment, a lot of, all the decisions are made. We bring people within the business, and so when we're making key decisions outside of myself and Stephen, we bring our leadership team into those decisions. But we are looking to put together an advisory board, and it's generally probably more so looking to bring on people that give different perspective, maybe outside of property as well. So just give us different perspective of how they've navigated certain decisions or challenges or grown a business and away from what we know, so they bring different perspective.
Yeah. And I mean, in order to stay sane and stay sharp, because I mean, you're pretty on. I think one of my first memories with you is I really wanted to model some rent vesting model with you with Daniel a few years ago, and you told me to come at your office on St Kilda Road. It was like 8:30, and you're working pretty hard back then. They're long hours, they're long days, and obviously when a financial year starts, it starts essentially all over again. Do you have things that you plan holidays or things that you're looking forward to get you out of the business? How do you? Because I'm starting to see that's becoming more important for me to remove myself from this place to get the best out of myself.
Yeah, so I'm a Monday to Friday lunch, let's call it. I'm extremely disciplined with both, as I said, personally when it comes to training, work. I don't drink during the week. I won't touch a drop of alcohol. I'm on a strict diet during the week. And then we leave the Fridays for sort of our networking time, Friday afternoons. And then I try to, as much as possible, if I don't have anything on in Melbourne, to get out of Melbourne and go down to the peninsula, spend some time there. And that's where I'll spend time reading, reflecting on, things that we're doing, on how we can do things better. And then outside of that, I do travel quite a bit. So I would spend, every 6 to 8 weeks I'd be on a holiday. And that, when I say holiday, it might be 4 to 5 days, but I really spend as much time as I can traveling, because I really enjoy traveling.
And do you find that keeps you motivated?
Yeah, and traveling, when I travel, I'm not one that can just lounge by the pool. I can do that for maybe a day. I really, it gives me time to go away and spend time. I enjoy reading. I dislike reading through my whole school years, and it wasn't until sort of my late 20s I started to really enjoy reading. So I spend a lot of time reading, and I find that refreshing.
Is there any books or anything that you could recommend that would be helpful?
Oh, you put me on the spot there. What am I reading at the moment? I read a lot of boring books. They're always books on some sort of psychology. I think I'm reading a book called Dopamine Nation at the moment, which talks about the impacts of dopamine, which is very interesting.
There you go. Take note of that. We'll wrap up here, Tony, because this has been awesome. But what's some of the best advice that you could give to anyone that's wanting to start their own business or get into the development space?
Well, I think it's easier probably to say start their own business, and it's really to find something they're passionate about. And I mentioned before, those non-negotiables, and there was the value piece, relationships, and the third one is passion. And I say passion because when times are good, it's easy to run a business. It's fun, exciting. It's when times are challenging and difficult, it's so easy to give up. But if you're truly passionate about something, that's when you grit your teeth, you dig your heels in, and you succeed, you get across those challenges. Passion is very, very important. If you're not passionate about something, when it comes to running or creating or driving a business or growing a business, I wouldn't do it. And so, as I said, those three fundamental non-negotiables, as we sort of call them, those are important to us, and passion's a big part of that.
Awesome. Tony, that's been gold. Thanks for your openness, your insights, and your honesty, mate. Really appreciate it. And thanks for coming on the margin.
Thanks, Michael. Cheers. Thanks for having me.